The mental health system is a definition of insanity.
We're not going to be called nuts and psychos and wackos anymore. We're going to be accepted as fellow human beings.
People think there's something unusual about that illness. They don't understand it's another medical illness.
Having a psychotic episode is like a waking nightmare.
She is sick. She needs help. Why is the law stopping me from getting her help?
Anytime you lock up someone against their will, you're going to almost always have a negative experience.
Is there a risk of people who shouldn't be locked up being locked up?
Funding for Minds on the Edge Facing Mental Illness is provided by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to enhance public understanding of science and technology in the modern world. The stories are hypothetical, but the dilemmas are real. From the living room to the emergency room, from prisons to the streets, facing mental illness challenges our public policy and our values. Our choices can mean disaster or give reasons for hope. So what would you do? Fred Friendly Seminars presents Minds on the Edge.
Justice Breyer, Professor Breyer, you're worried. It's about Olivia, a student of yours at Commonwealth University. Olivia's been a great student up till now, but something seems to have been changing. She's speaking rapidly. Some of her ideas don't hold together. The last paper she turned in had all these markings in the margins and arrows that actually didn't make any sense to you. She appears disheveled, and she looks like she hasn't slept maybe in days. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking this is a problem, and maybe she needs some help.
You see her a couple of days later in the college bookstore. She is on a buying binge, buying texts, medical texts, hundreds of dollars, maybe more, of these books. You ask her what she's doing, and she says, I'm studying states of consciousness. Your thoughts are?
I think maybe she's becoming a little manic, and maybe she should talk to somebody, and I could guide her to that person.
Well, it's interesting that you mention that, because it turns out that your good friend and colleague, Eric Kandel here, he knows something about this.
Eric, what do you think I should do here? A student is having seems to me, a really serious problem. She's writing all these notes, don't make sense. She's looked as if she was on a buying binge. How would you deal with it?
I would recommend that you speak to her directly and ask her what's happening in her life. Point out to her that you have been aware of the fact that there's a change in the pattern and that you presume she might be uncomfortable, unhappy with something. And the mere fact that you show empathy is going to be helpful to her. There is, I think, nothing kinder in medical exchange than to give the person who is ill a sense that you're trying to understand what's going on. She seems to be going to what might be a manic episode, and she clearly needs help.
You've actually said she may be ill.
Yes, she's clearly getting ill.
Dr. Scale, what's going on in Olivia's mind, do we think?
Olivia might not know that she has anything wrong at all. In fact, Olivia is working on some great paper, and she might have very excited, grandiose ideas. So she might be wondering why her professor is saying this to her. Yet, I agree with you, Dr. Kandel, that having that empathy and an initial support is a huge factor.
Professor, what would you actually say to Olivia when you sit down with her?
I'd say, Olivia, I was a little worried the way you were in class because you looked pretty disheveled, and I want to know what you're thinking. How are you feeling? Would it be a good idea, do you think, that we go over and talk to the counselor?
Fred Fries, what is Olivia likely to say?
Professor, there's nothing wrong with me. You're trying to paint the picture that I'm ill. I'm just working on something, and I'll work it out on my own.
To which you say?
Well, I'd say that's possible. I mean, you know, sometimes I can be involved in something, and I think I've never seen anything so good, and then my wife or my children point out, well, you know, you're overdoing this, and I don't know I'm overdoing it, and so I just wonder if because you look tired, and I just wonder if maybe it would be a good idea just to talk to somebody here about your life. I don't think you're...
What kind of person do you want me to talk to?
A counselor.
Well, I very much appreciate your concern for me. And if you really want me to go to see this counselor, do you know this counselor?
No, I don't, but
How can I trust who this counselor would be if you don't even know who this is?
part of the university.
Well,
Here,
that's no.
How's it going, Professor?
Not very well. Not very well.
Olivia, whether or not you have a mental illness isn't the issue. You seem to be having a hard time. You seem to be struggling. Why don't we just go talk to someone who's trained to understand these kinds of distress? Again,
I've talked to these counselors before, and they never know anything.
Let me come back to the professor. On Parents' Weekend last October, you actually met Olivia's mom and dad. Her father said, "Professor, Olivia loves your class. And if you ever think you want to talk to me about my daughter, feel free to do so." Do you call the parents?
Absolutely.
You do?
Yes, I would. I would, yes.
And what do you tell them?
I say, I'm worried about your daughter. And I describe the behavior, and what do you think? What do you think I ought to do?
Everybody okay with the good professor calling her parents?
Is there a question with a FERPA issue?
What's FERPA?
FERPA is a law that protects the confidentiality of students and their records.
So you're concerned about confidentiality and her privacy?
He may be violating the law by calling her father, or he may not. I don't know.
Justice Breyer may be violating the law by calling her parents?
It's possible.
Who pay her tuition?
It's possible.
Pete Early, problem?
Absolutely. I'm concerned. I have a professor who's called me, someone my daughter respects. And I've also noticed in my conversations that something's wrong. I'm alarmed because the school knows, where I realize that people with mental illness get thrown out of schools. So I immediately want to go see my daughter.
Havel Gordley, Mom, you talk regularly to your daughter, but when you start calling her over the last couple of days, she's not answering the phone. School's not too far away, so you just decide to get in the car and go and see what you see. When you get to her school, she's not in her room, and her friends say they have not seen her for the last couple of days. What's going through your minds?
Olivia's in trouble. And as her mom, I want to get to her, and I want to get her to some help.
So you're out looking for her, and you come across Olivia in a park. And she's walking in circles, and she's muttering to herself, and she's talking about states of consciousness. And you go up to your daughter, because this is not the Olivia you know, and you say what?
Tell me what you're thinking. We've heard you're not in class. You didn't answer our calls. What's going on? Why are you unhappy? Are you sad? Why are you in this park walking around in circles?
I throw my arms around her and I hug her. I pull her close. I tell her that I love her. I'm concerned. I'm fearful for her. She needs help, and I want to help her get that help.
Fred Fries, how might she respond to her mother and father?
Well, they need to understand that there's this spa up in the Mandarin Hotel, and if I can get to that spa, it's going to solve all the problems I've worked for. And Dad, I know it's $700 a day to get to that spa, but if you could just get me there, I know it is going to wash out, and I'll be able to put the papers together and everything.
Okay, Olivia, that sounds okay. Let's try to do that. But first, maybe we should go talk to somebody who might be able to help you get a better feel for why are you wanting to go to a spa. And then,
No, you're thinking mental illness. This is not mental illness. I've made some very important discoveries here related to that spa, and I can't explain it now, but I need to get there.
You have tried to reason with her. What's your next step?
Look, she's obviously not responding. She doesn't want to go see anyone. So I don't know any psychiatrists in this area. I don't want to go to the school because I don't want her to get thrown out of school. So what's our choice? I think we better take her to an emergency room.
You talk to Olivia, and she agrees to get in the car. And as you drive, Olivia becomes more agitated. And not only does she say she needs to go to the spa, but she needs to go to Washington, D.C., too, because she wants to bring this information to the president. And if she can touch the president's
forehead...
forehead...
The spa is in Washington, D.C., that's it.
And
it's
she
okay,
can then...
Olivia. We're in the car. We're on our way.
But you go
To an emergency
To
room.
the emergency room.
Right. Because I don't know where else to go.
Wrong.
And
I know.
And Olivia reluctantly goes in the emergency room with you, and Dr. Simpatico is there. What do you want him to do?
Doctor, our daughter is acting bizarrely. She is apparently manic. She wants to go to this spa. We literally have forced her to come in to see you. Help us.
I share their concern, and those concerns are supported by what Olivia appears to look like at first blush. So my reaction would be to tell them that I think they've made the right choice to bring her for an evaluation, and my next step would be to talk with Olivia and get a better sense of what's going on.
Okay, well, since Fred Fries, you've become Olivia here, it would appear, and we thank you for that. You've pulled yourself together.
Absolutely.
What do you say?
Doc, my folks are getting older here. I don't know why they brought me in here. They've had some trouble in the past, and we're on our way to Washington because they promised to take me to the spa, but they said I had to stop by here. Isn't that silly? I mean, there's no purpose in it.
And what do you hope to accomplish once you get to Washington?
At the spa. Well, I've been working on this project, and Washington is the center of a lot of activities, very important people in Washington. I know if I can get in with those waters, it'll help me with this project I'm working on.
But Olivia has something else in her mind, too. And she does not want to be here or treated. What can you do?
I would not feel comfortable having Olivia simply leave the emergency department. I'd want to get more information.
God bless you. That's not what happens. What happens is the doctor asks a series of quick questions. What does crying over spilt milk mean? Who's president? Do you know what day it is? And then comes to the parent and says, the law is very specific. Unless this person poses a danger to themselves or others, I may not require them to stay in this hospital. So, good luck and goodbye.
Judge Leifman. She's not apparently a threat to anybody or to herself. What does the law provide?
Very little. She's going to be released. She's not an imminent threat to herself or anyone else.
Doesn't matter that she's been walking around for 2 days.
Not at all.
Doesn't matter that she's sometimes
incoherent. The tragedy is just beginning.
The tragedy is just
beginning.
Art Kaplan, what's playing out here?
Well, you've got a system of healthcare that isn't particularly attentive to mental illness. It likes physical illness. Right. Second of all, I can't imagine this ER doc has spent more than 4 seconds talking to Olivia because he's probably overwhelmed, and this isn't going to occupy too much time because the ER has become the hospital for the poor. It's busy.
One of the other factors, Olivia probably, if she gets agitated, is going to run out the door.
Yes.
Right.
And no one's going to stop her.
And the emergency room doc, he's got patients
He has
stacked up.
patients
Is he
backed
going to go
up.
running after
He
her?
is not only is he not going to go running after, every emergency room has police on duty. They aren't going to run after her either. And she's going to be lost in the streets before anyone realizes sometimes that she's even gone.
And I'm the enemy now.
The parents are the
That's right.
enemy?
I have kidnapped my daughter. I have taken her to an emergency room thinking I'd get help. And now all of a sudden I've lost any trust that my daughter has in me. She will not believe anything I say from that point on. Yet I'm the only one who cares about her.
You're not the only one who cares about her. Mom cares about her. You're watching your daughter go through this.
Going through hell.
Going through hell.
Knowing that she is too.
And she is heading for the door now.
Yes.
So you follow her. You beg, you plead, you're in tears. A nurse walks by, and she says, if you want to get her treated, if you want to get her admitted, tell him she threatened to kill you. That'll get her in here. In other words,
right.
Lie. Mom, would you do that?
Yes,
You
I would. I want my daughter to get help.
Dad, do you agree?
I wouldn't lie at this point yet. I'd say, she's out on the street, let's call the police. Maybe they can pick her up and do something with her.
If you get the police, they would bring her back, hopefully, to psychiatry. And that gives you a little bit more leverage in terms of getting at least an interview in the psychiatric ER. At least at that point, she's in the right door.
Dr. Scale, what is Olivia feeling and thinking as she heads out the door?
Probably very alone, threatened. Who can I trust? I can't trust anybody. I'm out of here. As a community psychiatrist, I am so anxious, and what a heart-wrenching story, because I'm fast-forwarding 20 years from now, and 20-year-old Olivia is now 40-year-old Olivia, and she's sitting in front of me lamenting the last 20 years that she's lost. So something does have to happen now. We need an intervention, because we don't want her trickling through the system.
Let's leave Olivia's story there for a moment. And now let's talk about James. James is 32 years old. James hears voices, and he's heard voices on and off for years. The voices say that he's a piece of garbage, and that if he gets close to other people, he will contaminate their souls. James has worked as a clerk in a grocery store. He's been on and off of medication, and when he's heard these voices in the past, he's had some place to turn: his mother. But a few months ago, his mother died. And that's about when the voices started coming back in a very serious way. James suffers from schizophrenia. Dr. Simpatico, what is that?
It's an illness that results in a person experiencing delusions, which are beliefs that are not supported by external realities, hallucinations, which are sensory experiences that don't correlate with external events, and alterations in thought and logic that can create sort of internally consistent ways of looking at the world but don't correlate with the outside world.
Dr. Kendall, what's happening in his brain?
Well, we know that the brain is not functioning normally. We don't really know in detail the biology of schizophrenia. But schizophrenia is not just a disorder of hallucinations and delusions. People who have schizophrenia have what are called negative symptoms. They're very shy, they're withdrawn. And they also have cognitive symptoms. Their life is disorganized, they can't carry out certain tasks. And we don't know in detail what are the biological underpinnings of those components of the illness. I think we're treating mental illnesses as if they're a category by itself. And we manage this in a completely different way than any other medical illness, any other neurological illness. I see schizophrenia as just an extremely complex brain disorder. And I see this as a serious situation, and I would think that medical intervention would be essential.
Ellen Sachs, James, can you give us a sense of what he's experiencing?
Sure. I think I actually have special insight because I've experienced those things myself. I'm a person with chronic schizophrenia. The best way to describe having a psychotic episode is like a waking nightmare, where things are crazy, bizarre, frightening, confusing. With schizophrenia, you have delusions and hallucinations and disordered thinking. Like I was on the roof of the Yale Law School and I was saying, someone's infiltrated our copies of the legal cases. We've got a case to joint. I don't believe in joints, but they do hold your body together. So loosely associated words and phrases. But experientially, the feeling is utter terror.
And James is feeling very alone.
He needs support. Everybody needs support. And there are resources available, community mental health centers. So it might be useful for him to contact a social worker at a community mental health center and get some kind of support in his life.
James is feeling very alone, as you said, and he's scared, and he's staying in his apartment. He now can't go to work. He's paralyzed.
Right.
He loses his job.
Right.
But in a moment of clarity, he does know he needs help.
Right.
And where he knows to go is, again, the emergency room.
Right.
But they're overflowing. They say they can't help. But they do want to commend him to an outpatient clinic, Commonwealth Clinic. And so they give him an appointment there at 3 o'clock on Wednesday, 3 weeks from now. Surprise you?
No, it's all too familiar and disappointing that very few people referred out of emergency rooms actually make it to outpatient clinics. He needs a different kind of an approach. He needs an intensive case manager that can actually escort him out of that emergency room to the next.
Wait. They've given him an appointment and he's not even going to end up there?
Oh, no. James probably doesn't wear a watch. He's already disoriented. He doesn't know 3 weeks from 3 months. He doesn't track time well right now. He's in his illness.
But he
What's the
wanted
point?
treatment.
As you said, they're crowded. They say, here's your medicine. It'll make you better. Here's your appointment. By the way, they have a record on James. This isn't his first. He's been receiving medication. They could say, you know, we're going to send you back to the Commonwealth Behavioral Center. But if he's in an active psychotic episode right then, he needs treatment now, not in 3 weeks.
James is absolutely in crisis, and his mom has just died. This is a major crisis. And of course he's going to have very strong feelings about it. And being locked up or bringing in police, that's really scary. That is going to escalate. If I'm James, that's going to escalate me. I need a safe place.
You tell me this happens all the time.
He will not be admitted. He has not represented any danger to himself or others. They will not keep him, and they will treat him as another person coming through that emergency room.
So James walks out with his appointment 3 weeks from now.
And maybe a prescription.
And maybe a prescription, and is disoriented. He is now about to have something else happen.
That's right.
He is arrested
That's right.
for public urination. He now goes not to the hospital, Judge Leifman, but to...
Jail.
Surprised?
Not at all. Judges are much more likely to see consumers with mental illness than psychiatrists.
Judges are more likely than psychiatrists to see
By
people?
far.
You see more people with mental illness than Dr. Scale here?
Probably 10 times more a day than she does.
What is going on here?
Well, he's committed a crime. And the law enforcement officer is there to enforce the law. And the public's outraged. This guy is exposing himself. He's urinating in this beautiful rose bush, and the woman who owns the rose bush is outraged, and she calls the police, and they come and they do their job. We have over 1 million people a year arrested in this country with severe mental illnesses. Over 1 million.
We assume that the police encounter has that outcome.
Right.
The police are poorly trained. The police tackle James on the street.
No, James runs from them, so it's going to be a resisting police officer. It's now a felony. It's unlikely it ends up as a urination case.
Pete Early, step aside from your role for a minute and speak as a journalist. What's happened here?
Well, in the 60s and 70s, we had a little under 1 million people in state mental hospitals, and many of these places were horrific places. We started closing them down. We never built the community system necessary. Today, there are less than 55,000 people in state hospitals. There are 300,000 with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and major depression in jail, 500,000 on probation. That's due to two things, in my opinion: no community safety net, and laws that say a person has to be a danger before anyone can successfully intervene.
James doesn't get kept in jail. There's not room. He hasn't committed a major crime. The worst scenario is the police say, you know, don't do it again. They put him on the street. James now becomes homeless and now is subject more to being killed as opposed to being held safe.
Let me pick up James' story there. James is back on the street. When he's released, he's going to have to wait perhaps months to get into an outpatient. You're nodding your head, yes?
Yeah, could be.
What's going to happen to him in these intervening months?
Any number of things. Most of them are not good.
Such as?
He'll do some event like urinating on a rose bush or something else that'll land him in a path of least resistance that leads to the criminal justice system. He just may go off the radar screen and quietly live somehow out of dumpsters. And if he's lucky, if he happens to live in an area where there's a competent and dedicated group of outpatient psychiatrists and treatment systems, he may have the good fortune to cross paths with that, and they may be able to help him. But if I were playing the odds across the country, I think the likelihood of that happening is fairly remote.
It's almost an impossibility.
An impossibility?
If you listen to this, don't you understand that the mental health system is a definition of insanity at this point? We keep doing the same thing again and again, and we expect a different outcome. It will not change until the system changes. What's most likely is going to happen, he may run into the same police officer. And the officer says, you know what? I took him in on a misdemeanor and they let him right out. So now, you know, he ran away from me. I'm going to charge him with a felony. So he's going to come into the felony system, and he's going to sit 8 times longer than someone without mental illness for the same charge, because we don't know what to do with him. And we're going to get him into a forensic state hospital so we can restore his competency, not so we can get him back to the community for treatment, so we can try him and send him to prison or jail. In Florida, a third of our mental health money is going to 1,700 beds to restore competency. And then there's no money at the front end to keep people out. That's your reality.
And your odds of being in the right place at the right time are pretty low. The money in some states is more readily available than money in other states. The problem is we refer to it as a system, and it isn't a system. It is lots of things that are sort of put together almost by bubblegum, as opposed to by any plan. And the goal for most of us in policy-making positions is to try to untangle it enough to create a system.
And these systems cost money, and people are reluctant to spend more money because they may look at a person like James and see that he's in and he's out and he's periodically homeless, and Fred Fries, that he's simply a lost cause.
Well,
isn't that what people might conclude?
In the last century, the 20th century, that might have been the case. But this is not the 20th century. This has changed. What we ought to do with James is go up to him and say, James, rather than go to jail, I've got a job for you. Now, it's only 3 hours a week, and we're only going to pay you a minimum wage. But you're going to be working with a lot of other people that have recovered from this stuff. We're changing the world here, James, because finally we're not going to be locked out. We're not going to be called nuts and psychos and wackos anymore. We're going to be accepted as fellow human beings, but we've got to work on this, and we've got to start somewhere. James, let's go with this.
I think that's a great message. One of the strange outcomes of people failing systems is that if you fail far enough and you end up on the street and homeless for a long time, you're more likely to get help than if you're falling through. As you fall through, there's no one really there to catch you.
Well, that's simply because in our healthcare system, we love to rescue, but we don't want to prevent.
Ellen Sachs, you hear Fred Fries say this.
I think it's fantastic. I think mental health professionals sometimes make the mistake that people with serious mental illness really need to lower their expectations. And I think in the beginning especially, we should be very supportive of people working and living up to their, quote, pre-morbid potential. It makes life better for them. It makes life better for everybody else. Sort of a win-win.
How is he likely to respond to this kind of offer?
You know, different people respond in different ways to offers of help. I tend to think that, you know, with someone who seems caring and has similar experiences and seems to want to help, that I as James or Fred as James would be responsive.
Dr. Kandel's point that he needs empathy. You cannot get more empathy than you can get from somebody who's actually been in that situation.
What we're talking about here is creating possibilities for people and operating with the assumption, instead of a disability framework, kind of a capability framework. And you offer people opportunities, either to work or to engage in treatment or to reconnect with family, whatever it is. And you're speaking to people in a way that assumes that they can do things, and let them tell you that they need help with it or not.
So you can get through to James.
Oh, absolutely. You have to connect empathically, but I think there's no way to have James go anywhere unless James feels that you're there for him.
Right. You know, part of the old thinking is that we had treatment-resistant people. That's not true. We have treatment-resistant programs. And so we have to start to rethink.
James wants treatment.
Correct. But the treatment accessible to him is inappropriate for him.
Dr. Scale?
Well, I'm a very good psychopharmacologist, I might say, but that's not where my strength lies with treating patients. It's with respect, dignity, eye contact, warmth. How can I help you? And what they know is when they're with us, we're in this together for the long haul. If you choose not to take medications, we hear you. Okay, let's, you know, you have to trust us first.
Programs that work. Programs that work.
Trauma-related services. We now know that almost 100% of women who were in jail and prison with severe mental illnesses were sexually abused as children. They suffer from really severe post-traumatic stress. But very few communities offer any kind of trauma-related services for that population.
Programs that have case management, where someone actually feels responsible for helping people make those connections.
Pete Early.
Peer-to-peer, getting someone who is actually dealing with a mental illness to talk to someone else because they can relate. Second, every city in this county should have CIT, Crisis Intervention Training. So when the police get called, they know that this is a person who is psychotic, so they don't rush them to the jail and drop them off. They come in and talk to them and try to get them some kind of help. It's sad, but the number one person who deals with psychotic people before the judge are law enforcement.
Lauren Spiro.
Well, I'm James now, and you know, I just feel so hopeful. I mean, you believe in me? You want me? You think I can work? I can hold a job? My God, you know, I need that hope. I need to be reminded that I have dignity and that I'm treated with respect, and that just changes my whole self-image. I mean, I can believe in myself, and I can feel calm, and I can have a home and a job and be a member of the community. I'm excited and ready to go, but I need continued help and support.
This is a medical problem, and we need to look at it as a disease model, not a criminal justice one. And what the problem with the illness is, people go up and down. It's not steady. So you need a continuum. So if they need hospitalization at some point, they get it. If they need community support, they get it. But that is not available.
Avell Gordley.
Yes. Crisis intervention training, absolutely critical. In our community, James did not survive his encounter with the police. The other factor in terms of programs, culturally specific programs, if James is African American, more than likely, he's afraid of the police. If he sees them, more than likely, he's going to go in the other direction. That's a recipe for disaster.
James is on his own again. He may or may not be taking his medication again. The neighbors and the shop owners who see him frankly think James is a nuisance. He's eating out of dumpsters. He's not bathing. He is talking to you when you walk by him. You're a neighbor. What do you think?
Where are the cops? Why aren't they moving this guy? He's lousy for my business. He's bad for my property values. He smells. I don't like him. And you know what? I'm afraid of him. I don't want my kids around him. By the way, the mayor just told me that a third of the budget of the city's being cut.
I got news for you. You're the mayor. Okay? So, Mr. Mayor, not only is your budget being cut, but your constituents and your taxpayers, and your donors are calling you. What are they saying?
They're probably saying that James doesn't vote, so you better listen to what I have to say. But
no, but that's very true. That's exactly. They're saying you're already putting money in that system. Look at the homeless population. I'm not going to give you more money. I don't think this is a nuisance. I think these people are dangerous. I want them off.
Estelle, I know you've given me a lot of money. I value your support. But the reality is, this city is not going to be able to tolerate a bunch of people out on the street. It's going to give us a bad reputation for business. We can't have that. You remember what it was like here 12 years ago? We had reams of people wander around the street. We couldn't get anybody to come downtown, and no one would live downtown. I got to spend something.
But Mr. Mayor, you're spending $100,000 a day keeping these people in your jail.
Fred Fries, what's happening to James while all of this is going on?
James has been locked out by the establishment that is totally controlled by chronically normal people who know nothing about serious mental illness.
I want that endorsement in my next campaign that I'm chronically normal. But
no insult intended. We have these disabilities. We want roles in society, and we want to be acknowledged as fellow citizens in your community, Mr. Mayor.
If you want
not
me,
just avoiding us and say, put us in jail.
I don't want to avoid you, but I've got to build those jobs. You tell me how these programs are going to contribute
You
to
start
my
us
effort.
off minimum wage, 3 hours a week. That's all you have to pay for these poor folks who are totally lost out, to give them a little bit of hope.
Well, I might accept that. If that really is going to be cost effective, I can start you down the road.
Susan?
Everybody's talking about James's problem as though it's a mental health problem. It is a housing problem. You need to pick up the phone and call Sam. Sam's program is going to be cost effective compared to jails and prisons, but you probably have never heard of Sam, which is why we're doing this show.
I find this discussion extremely depressing. When you think of the health gains that this country has achieved in other areas, it's really quite remarkable. People are living longer, enormous improvement in public health, preventive measures. The incidence of mental illness has not changed one iota in the last 200 years. the major reason for that is not just the social programs. They are disasters, and I grant it. We know so little about the biological underpinnings of this. If we could, by imaging a person or taking, EEGs from them, determine whether or not this person is having a psychotic episode, we would be in a much better position to tell them, you really have a problem that needs immediate intervention.
Many people are living longer, but I just want to say people diagnosed with serious mental illness on average die 25 years younger than the general population.
That's the point
The system, the society is continuing to fail to meet our needs. Jobs, housing.
We know how to help most people with mental illnesses. We just don't do it because of the money. Now, you want to worry about cost effectiveness? Forget it. I'm going to tell you it's going to cost more, but I want you to do something. You go under that bridge, and that's your son. That's your son. How much do you want to spend to help him?
I've had mental illness in my own family, and I know what that means. But you have to understand something. Right. I hear stories about who's under the bridge, who's unemployed, who just got laid off every single day. I have empathy. This city, as you know, is undergoing severe budget cuts. You tell me to spend more, I'm telling you it isn't gonna happen.
I'm going to come to the mayor and I'm going to say, okay, I've heard you. And you know what I'm going to do now? I want to sue these people because the court is the only way that I can force people to do the right thing.
No, I would beware of the courts. I mean, this person doesn't know much about the problem, so let's go to a group of people who know still less.
I'll tell you what I will. I'll tell you what I will do as the mayor. If Fred can show me, I was interested in that part-time job program. Doesn't seem to cost me too much. If I can get somewhere with that, I'm interested.
All right, let me bring us back to our world. Dr. Scale, James agrees to come in for treatment, and you will provide that. James is now at Commonwealth Psychiatric Hospital, and so is Olivia. Olivia's parents, despite what happened in the hospital there, did manage to get her to come home, and you spent months dealing with the trauma, the emotion. You provided everything that a loving, able family could provide, and you also came up with a diagnosis: bipolar disorder with psychotic features. What's that?
A person with bipolar disorder experience changes in mood. They might be manic, like we saw Olivia earlier, with high energy states, no need to sleep, they just really don't need to sleep, pressured speech, they're easily distractible, or they might have periods of extreme despair. Inter-episodically, they're neither manic nor depressed. A very tricky time to get people to see that they have illness during that time because they feel fine.
Mom and Dad, you wake up one morning and she's gone. So you go out looking for her again. This has become familiar, unfortunately, to you. And you find her sometime later on a street corner. Her blouse is ripped. She's got a black eye, and you fear maybe she's been sexually abused. She's haranguing passersby. She's telling them that they have to listen to me, listen to me. You're here again.
Yep, you're right back in the same spot. By this time, you've counted pills, threatened to throw them out if they don't take pills. You realize you can't talk to them about pills because they know absolutely how you stand on pills. But hopefully you're smart enough to know now how to try to navigate through this system.
Okay.
Good luck.
You have talked about this before, but now you decide that civil commitment is what is going to be required. What is civil commitment?
Depends on the state, but you have the person held against their will, involuntarily committed for up to 72 hours, and a hearing is held. The person who is facing involuntary commitment, by law, has an attorney there. That attorney does not represent you. It represents the person who is ill.
Susan Steffen, you're a lawyer, and you are going to represent Olivia.
Well, Olivia is lucky because I care a lot about Olivia, and I'm going to show up ahead of time. I'm going to talk to Olivia ahead of time. I'm going to look at her records ahead of time, and that makes me 1 in 1,000 lawyers who represent Olivia, because the thought that Olivia is represented is an illusion. Somebody's going to show up at the hearing and say, I'm your lawyer. that person is more likely than not going to collude in Olivia's commitment.
Well, you're better than that.
I am better.
You're better than that. And Olivia's going to tell you that she doesn't want to be put away in a hospital.
I don't want to be locked up, no. I want to be at the spa.
Which is a rational desire given the effects on your life of a history of civil commitment.
You're about to
represent
represent Olivia at this hearing. You've now heard
Kathy,
from...
you seem like a wonderful person. Can I talk to you, please? Could I? It's my parents.
Can I talk to someone that really understands?
They think they're in the same spot. It's not the spot. It's the spa. 3 letters, spa. Right. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle were tying it all together. The philosophy, the religion, and the law.
Do you have a place
to live? Are you listening?
Yes, I am. And I'm trying to help you get out of the hospital. And the most important question in terms of getting out of the hospital is, are you willing to go home and live with your parents? Because the judge is going to want to know that you have a place to go.
Susan and Olivia, can we take a break here for a minute? Yes. As her attorney, what's your role?
My job is to represent what she wants, but my job is also to counsel her.
Okay, but to represent what she wants, let's stay with that. She does not want to go to this facility that her parents want to commit her to.
Yes.
So your position in front of the bench and the state of Commonwealth will be what?
That she should be discharged. My position is also, my job is to counsel her so that, for instance, I would say to her, look, you may want to go to the spa, but if you want to get out of here, put a lid on the spa thing for a little while because it's not going to help you get out. If you want to get out, let's talk about practically how we're going to accomplish it.
And you're trying to help Olivia preserve her autonomy, correct? That's what.
She's my client,
okay.
And I'm supposed to represent her.
You run into her parents in the hall.
I want to keep Olivia safe, and I know you're working toward a discharge, but a discharge to what?
That's very important. We all want to keep Olivia safe. And what I want to know about is what community options has the hospital considered?
There are so many people who are looking after Olivia's interests. To have a lawyer who's listening to what she wants is very empowering. To have a lawyer who's representing her and her wishes and showing her respect and dignity is extremely important.
I've been appointed to represent your daughter. I know you've been going through hell. I'm trying to find out, what have you tapped into in the community? What are you aware of in terms of what can help you keep Olivia at home? Because that's where I want Olivia to go back.
God bless you, because you care enough not to just get her out. Now, taking her home, she just ran away from home. We have tried to get her into community services, but she doesn't think she needs these services. She doesn't want to talk to me. She wants to go to this damn spa.
Does she know about peer? Does she know about peer services?
Let's check that out. But here's what I want to know from you. When this hearing's over, and you get Olivia out, and she's standing in that hallway with us, will you help us get her into those services?
Absolutely.
Will you make the phone calls? Because we have tried and failed.
Absolutely, because that's what I do. I don't believe my kind of brand of lawyering isn't walk in and walk out. I think that what the parents want is for Olivia to be safe long term, to do well, to have a job, to thrive.
And how is getting her out of the system going to help that when we're trying to get her in the system? How are you fit to judge whether my daughter needs to be in a hospital or not? And why does the court say she has to be dangerous first? She is sick, she needs help. Why is the law stopping me from getting her help?
Justice Breyer, take us into some of what we're hearing here, which is two very different versions and visions of autonomy for Olivia.
I think that's the problem here. When we had a rule that made it too easy to put people in institutions, they were warehoused and forgotten. And sometimes, at least, those institutions were pretty bad. And on the other hand, when you have a law that makes it too hard to put people into institutions, you get into the tragic situations we've just seen. And so this standard, I think, dangerous to yourself or others, immediately I heard a very interesting question. And you said imminent. Is it imminent or is it not imminent? Maybe there's some room in the standard, and if you don't like that standard, the difficulty from the point of view of a lawyer or a judge is what is the standard then? Not whether that's perfect, but what is a better one?
And then there's two serious problems here. The first is, if they're lucky and they get the daughter hospitalized, she's going to get great care now. But she's going to get out in 3 months, and she's going to go right back into the same horrible system that let her go into that. And the second, and this is the other issue that I think we need to change our thinking on. For a lot of people, when they're in crisis, it's like having a heart attack of the brain. We don't bring a heart attack victim to court and spend 2 weeks and decide if they should get treatment. We now know, though, that the longer it takes to get someone treatment for a mental health crisis, the more likelihood of permanent brain damage.
You don't lock up heart attack victims either. And the reason that there's a lawyer is because it's a legal process, because you actually, as private citizens, can't lock people up. Right. And so there must be legal representation. But what I was going to say to the parents is
that's
that
the reality.
It's not a solution these days to get somebody into an institution, because they will be there 5 days, 10 days. You said 3 months. I don't know where you're from.
Well, no, the 3 days is just for the hearing. But if they get past the court and they get admitted.
Sam Sumbaris.
These are very familiar conversations and sort of at the heart of a very expensive and poorly run mental health criminal justice system. And I want to go back to the question that Susan was asking, what are we going to do after hospitalization? Because all the drama is not about do they go to jail or hospital, it's like what happens after that short stay.
Alan, fascinating discussion about where and how Olivia's best interests are served.
I think autonomy is extremely important, and it's good for patients to have a right to refuse, not because it's good for them to refuse treatment, but because it's good for them to have choice. And I think in addition to combating stigma and providing resources so people can get treatment, one of the things we should do, instead of using a lot of force, is study how we could use less force, how we can bring it about so that people want treatment and don't have to have force. I mean, force is not a good solution.
I think a side issue that Ellen referred to is the residual stigmata associated with mental illness.
Absolutely.
What's the big deal about being hospitalized and other illnesses? Why can't that be brought to bear on mental illness?
Right.
Why can't it?
Because people think there's something unusual about that illness. They don't understand it's another medical illness.
They may think people are to blame. They may feel guilty.
The reality of the experience in the psychiatric hospital, the experience itself can be
traumatic. Anytime you lock up someone against their will, you're going to almost always have a negative experience with that. You want people, if they need to be in a hospital, want to be there.
This hearing takes place before you. How will you make your decision?
Well, we'll listen to the facts of the case. I'll see if there's any evidence that it's imminent dangerousness to self or others. And imminent is usually the hardest hurdle. And based upon what I heard, she's probably not in imminent danger. Now, it would be very difficult for me to involuntarily hospitalize her.
While you deliberate, let's come back to James. He's back out on the streets, and the voices are back. And they say that he should die, and he feels threatened. He's at a street festival, surrounded by people, and the voices are closing in. He reaches for a glass bottle to defend himself and breaks that bottle. And sadly, tragically, a shard of glass goes flying and cuts a little girl badly in the cheek. It blinds her in one eye. Mr. Mayor, how is the media going to play this? And how is the public going to react?
Well, after I visit the little girl, I think that the public is all over my case about getting these people off the street. How I do it, where I put them, they don't much care.
What do you expect the media to be playing?
Oh, I think we're going to see pictures of the little girl and a lot of interviews with the parents, and the parents are going to be saying, what was that guy doing out? That man is a danger.
Well, and then the legislature passes Kendra's law to make sure everybody gets locked up.
Okay, first thing we hear from is the father. What are these, quote, insane people doing out on the streets? Look what they've done to my little girl. Bethany. Ava, you're a state senator.
I know that my job has just gotten more difficult in terms of working with my colleagues, many of whom don't understand mental illness, mental health issues. That job has just gotten harder.
What are you going to say to Bethany's father
I'm going to sit with him. I'm going to listen to his plea, and I will...
Will you sponsor the bill?
He's my constituent.
Will you sponsor the bill?
I will work on behalf of the bill. He's my constituent.
Judge Leifman, what's involved in this bill? It's modeled after Kendra's law.
Well, it's going to be an assisted outpatient bill, which means that...
it's called Bethany's law.
Of course,
It's called
Bethany.
Bethany's law.
And we're glad she's recovering. And it's going to tell the court that they're to bring people in front of them that might be exhibiting signs of serious mental illnesses, and that I'm to tell the person if they don't stay on their medication, I'm going to order them to be temporarily hospitalized. And then I'm going to tell them once they're hospitalized and they go back to the community, if they go off their medication, they're going to come back to me. I'm going to put them back in the hospital, and it's going to put this enormous burden on the court, and we don't have any more money. And now all of a sudden I have 1,000 new cases, and I don't have a lot of answers.
Who here will testify on behalf of this bill?
Because individuals, when they are in psychosis, are disabled with regard to their ability to make a rational decision as to what's best for them.
Well, some
and
of
when
them,
you are in that state of total psychosis, it is absolutely inhumane for society to ignore you and allow you to continue to be raped and abused and freezing and dying in the streets or going to jail. That's why I'll testify.
I'll testify as
Dr.
well.
Scale.
Because we see not only the imminent risk people that it's easy when someone's going to commit suicide or harm someone else. It's the other piece that I won't eat because I believe my food is poisoned. I'm out in the middle of traffic because I think I'm the traffic controller and they're putting other people at risk as well. Those are the trickier pieces.
Who's going to testify against it? Estelle Richmond.
I'm going to testify against it because locking people up doesn't produce treatment. What I need is people to invest in my community system. So you get the treatment, so you have the options. If we're going to put the resources in the system, we can prevent the accident. Passing a law has nothing to do with putting in treatment.
And who else is testifying against?
I think bringing more legal involvement into a clinical matter is a mistake. The teaching moment that this example provides is to highlight how James, in fact, had been seeking treatment. We don't need more laws for him to go to treatment. He went to the emergency room. He was refused. So I would highlight the importance of having the services in place that would create a more comprehensive safety net so that these kinds of situations can be prevented.
Susan, you will testify?
I absolutely will testify
And you will
against
say-
it. Whenever something bad happens, people pass restrictive laws with no funding, and it makes people feel better, and it doesn't improve the community system. It doesn't prevent anything from happening, and frankly, I don't see any connection between, it could have been a thug who broke the bottle, and there wouldn't be people passing restrictive laws. We need community treatment. Andrew Goldstein, who is the guy for whom Kendra's law essentially was named, went to seek treatment and was turned away. We need funding for voluntary treatment.
Justice Breyer, what questions, from your perspective, would you have for the citizens who are testifying for or against?
As a federal judge, I'm worried about taking people's life or liberty away without what we call due process, which really means, is this a reasonable thing to do in the circumstance? And the law normally operates on the assumption that unless it's really shown to the contrary, an individual has the ability to take care of himself and is free, and other people shouldn't do things to him that he really doesn't want done. So the first thing I would want to know is, what is the risk of abuse of the law? Is there a risk of people who shouldn't be locked up being locked up?
I have personally been involuntarily hospitalized a number of times, including being brought to a court, declared insane, and put away. And as I recover from these episodic disorders, my thoughts are always the same, and that is, thank goodness somebody realized I was totally psychotic and took care of me and put me in here, because if I'd have been left out of there, I might not be here.
Right. Eric Kendall, what gives us hope?
What gives us hope is that biology is capable of making enormous progress, that we've made progress in all other areas of medicine, really quite remarkable progress. And we face here the greatest challenge biology has ever faced, to understand the human mind and its most sophisticated, elaborate disorders. It's not an accident we don't know more about schizophrenia. This affects the most special, uniquely human cognitive functions that exist. So we ought to encourage people to do more science of the brain, but these are absolutely soluble problems.
For now, our story must end. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your insights and your incredible candor. Thank you very much.
Visit our website at pbs.org to learn more. Engage the issues, explore the options, participate in the discussion, and find tools for change at pbs.org. Minds on the Edge, Facing Mental Illness is available on DVD for $29.95. To order, call 1-800-336-1917 or write to the address on your screen. Minds on the Edge, Facing Mental Illness was produced by Fred Friendly Seminars, which is solely responsible for its content. Funding for Minds on the Edge was provided by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to enhance public understanding of science and technology in the modern world.